Ambassador Lavra Bennett looked out through the thick glass of her transport ship as the Galaxy Council station grew larger in the viewing port. The massive structure hung in space like a silver city, spinning slowly around its central core. She had spent 3 years preparing for this moment, learning alien languages and customs, studying the history of the 12 species that ruled this part of the galaxy. Today she would represent all of humanity in their first formal request to join the Galaxy Council. Captain Jake Morrison stood behind her on the bridge of the Voyage as Endeavor. His ship was small compared to the alien vessels they could see moving around the station, but it was the best humanity could offer. The Council had been very clear about the rules: only one escort ship, no weapons powered, and they must stay at least 10,000 kilometers away from the station during the talks. Nervous, Ambassador? Morrison asked quietly. Bennett smiled and shook her head. She had been a diplomat for 20 years, working on peace treaties between human colonies and negotiating trade deals across dozens of worlds. This was bigger than anything she had done before, but she felt ready. Dr. Andrew Hayes joined them at the viewing port. He was a tall man with gray hair who had spent his life studying alien cultures. The Council had 12 different species, each with their own ways of thinking and communicating. Hayes had written detailed reports on all of them, trying to help Bennett understand how to approach each group. "Remember what we discussed about the Zephyrians," Hayes said softly. "They value direct speech but consider it rude to interrupt. The Murthani will want to hear about our water worlds, and the Korzites care most about technology and logic." Commander Lisa Wright checked her equipment one more time. She was Bennett's security officer, though she knew her weapons would be useless if something went wrong this far from human space. The Council's own security was supposed to protect all diplomats during the talks. It had worked that way for thousands of years. Bennett's transport ship detached from the Endeavor and began its approach to the station. She sat alone in the passenger section, reviewing her speech notes one final time. Humanity had much to offer the galaxy: their rapid technological growth, their ability to adapt to different worlds, their art and music and literature. They had also made mistakes, fought wars among themselves, but that was in the past. The colonies were united now, working together to explore space and build a better future. The docking process took an hour. Alien technology guided her ship into a berth designed for diplomatic vessels. When the airlock opened, Bennett stepped into a corridor filled with breathable atmosphere but smelling of ozone and something floral she could not identify. 2 robotic guides waited for her, their metal bodies shaped like flowing water. "Ambassador Bennett of humanity," one robot said in perfect English. "We will escort you to your quarters. The formal session begins in 6 standard hours." The quarters were larger than she had expected, with a sleeping area, a workspace, and a bathroom adapted for human needs. A wall screen showed views of space. Outside the station, including the distant shape of the Endeavor, Bennett felt a moment of loneliness, knowing she was further from home than any human had ever been during a diplomatic mission. She spent the next few hours reviewing her presentation. Materials. The holographic projectors had been tested and worked perfectly with the station's systems. She would show the Council representatives images of Earth, the colonies, human achievements in science and art. She had recordings of human music, samples of literature translated into galactic common language, and data about their terraforming projects. When the time came, Bennett, dressed in her formal diplomatic robes, dark blue with silver trim, representing Earth and the unity of the human colonies. She walked through corridors filled with beings she had only seen in photographs before. The Veltari looked like giant insects with crystalline shells that reflected light in beautiful patterns. The Hagrim were short and stocky with thick fur covering their bodies. Each species had adapted to their home worlds in different ways, but all had achieved space travel and joined the Council. The Council chambers were enormous, with seating arranged in a circle around a central speaking area. Each species had their own section, designed for their particular needs. The aquatic Murthani sat in tanks of water, while the energy-based Lumphic appeared as floating lights in special containment fields. At the highest point sat Chancellor Crystal of the Zephyrians, a being that looked almost human except for the silver skin and large black eyes. Bennett walked to the center of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. Hundreds of alien eyes watched her as she activated the holographic projectors. The first image showed Earth as seen from space, blue and green and beautiful. "Honored members of the Galaxy Council," she began, her voice carried by translation. "Systems to every being in the chamber. I am Lavra Bennett, speaking for all humanity. We come before you not as conquerors or traitors seeking profit, but as a species ready to join the galactic community as partners and friends." She spoke for 2 hours, showing images of human cities, their art and music, their scientific achievements. She talked about the colonies where humans had learned to live in harmony with local ecosystems, their efforts to preserve alien ruins they had discovered, their willingness to share their technology with other species. The alien representatives listened without interruption, though Bennett could see some of them communicating with each other through methods she could not understand. The Korzites pulsed with different colors, while the Myrthani created patterns in their water tanks. She could not tell if they were impressed or bored or hostile. When she finished, Chancellor Crystal spoke. The Council thanks Ambassador Bennett for her presentation. We will now begin our deliberations. You will be informed when we have reached a decision." Bennett returned to her quarters feeling hopeful but uncertain. The presentation had gone well, but alien expressions were hard to read. Hayes and Wright contacted her from the Endeavor, reporting that they had monitored everything and thought she had done an excellent job. Over the next 3 days, Bennett waited. She was allowed to meet with individual species representatives in smaller groups. The Veltari ambassador Sekmoth seemed particularly interested in human poetry and asked many questions about their creative processes. The Myrthani wanted to know about Earth's oceans and the colonies where humans lived underwater. Each conversation felt positive, building what Bennett hoped were friendly relationships. On the morning of the 4th day, the summons came. The Council had reached their decision. Lavra Bennett walked through the corridors of the Galaxy Council station with steady steps, though her heart beat faster than normal. 3 days of waiting had ended with a simple message. The Council would announce their decision in 1 hour. She had spoken with Dr. Hayes and Commander Wright that morning, and both felt optimistic about humanity's chances. The individual meetings with alien representatives had gone well, and several species seemed genuinely interested in human culture. And technology. The council chambers looked exactly the same as before, but somehow felt different. The lighting seemed dimmer, and the alien representatives sat quietly in their sections without the small movements and communications she had noticed during her presentation. Chancellor Crystal waited at the center podium, his silver skin reflecting the chamber lights. Bennett took her position in the speaking circle, standing alone as council tradition required. The Endeavor was monitoring through approved communication channels, so Hayes and Wright could watch everything that happened. She felt their support across the vast distance of space. "Ambassador Lavra Bennett of Humanity," Chancellor Crystal began, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The Galaxy Council has completed its deliberation regarding your species' application for membership. We have reviewed your presentation, studied your cultural materials, and examined all available data about human civilization." Bennett waited, trying to read the Chancellor's expression. His large black eyes showed nothing she could understand. Around the chamber, the other species representatives remained perfectly still. "The Council's decision is unanimous," Crystal continued. "Humanity's application for membership in the Galaxy Council is denied with extreme prejudice." The words hit Bennett like a physical blow. She had expected possible denial, but the phrase extreme prejudice was reserved for species considered actively dangerous to galactic peace. She started to speak to ask for clarification, but the Chancellor raised a hand for silence. "The Council has determined that humanity represents an unacceptable threat to galactic stability," Crystal said, his voice growing colder. "Your species demonstrates aggressive expansionist tendencies, rapid militarization of colonial territories, and concerning biological adaptability that suggests potential for unlimited growth and resource consumption. Bennett found her voice. Chancellor, I must respectfully disagree with this assessment. Humanity has shown consistent progress toward peaceful cooperation. Our colonial expansion has been careful to avoid inhabited systems, and we have shared our discoveries freely with other species we have encountered. You are mistaken, Ambassador, the Chancellor replied. The Council has been monitoring human activities for 73 standard years through concealed observation networks. We have detailed records of your military buildups, territorial disputes between colonial factions, and rapid technological advancement in weapons systems. The revelation shocked Bennett. The Council had been spying on humanity for decades, watching and judging them without any contact or communication. She thought of all the years humans had wondered if they were alone in the galaxy, never knowing. They were being observed and evaluated. Furthermore, Crystal continued, biological analysis of human specimens obtained through various means shows your species possesses unusual adaptability genes that allow rapid evolution in response to environmental pressures. This trait, combined with your aggressive expansion patterns, marks humanity as a potential threat to every other species in the galaxy. Bennett stepped forward, her diplomatic training taking over despite her shock and anger. Chancellor, these observations were made without our knowledge or consent. If the Council had approached us openly, we could have addressed your concerns through peaceful dialogue. Humanity seeks only friendship and cooperation with other species. The time for dialogue has passed, Chancellor Crystal said. His voice carried a finality that made Bennett's blood run cold. The Council has also determined that humanity's natural aggression makes diplomatic solutions impossible. Your species will inevitably resort to violence when faced with restrictions on expansion or resource access. Around the chamber, energy barriers began to shimmer into existence. Bennett realized with growing horror that they were surrounding her position. She could see the alien representatives watching without emotion as the transparent walls of energy formed a cage around the speaking circle. What is the meaning of this? Bennett demanded, her diplomat's calm finally cracking. I am here under diplomatic immunity. These barriers violate every principle of civilized conduct. Chancellor Crystal stood slowly, his tall form casting shadows in the chamber lights. The Council recognizes no diplomatic immunity for representatives of species deemed existential threats to galactic peace. Your presence here has been reclassified from diplomatic mission to intelligence gathering operation. Bennett pressed against the energy barriers, feeling them buzz with dangerous power. This is madness. I came here in good faith, following all your protocols. I represent a peaceful mission seeking only friendship and cooperation. You represent a species that will consume and destroy everything in its path unless stopped. The Chancellor replied, The Council has studied hundreds of species over thousands of years. We recognize the patterns. Humanity shows every sign of becoming a galactic plague that would eventually threaten the survival of all other intelligent life. The energy barriers began to pulse with increasing intensity. Bennett could feel heat radiating from them and realized with growing terror what was about to happen. You cannot do this. I am an ambassador. My government will respond to any harm done to a diplomatic representative. That is precisely what we intend, Chancellor Crystal said. Humanity must understand that the Galaxy Council will not tolerate threats to galactic peace. Your death will serve as both deterrent and message. Any attempt by your species to expand beyond your current territory will result in complete annihilation. Bennett thought of her family on Earth, of the billions, of humans across dozens of worlds who had no idea what was happening here. She thought of Jake Morrison and his crew watching helplessly from the Endeavor, too far away to intervene even if they could somehow penetrate the station's defenses. Please, she said, dropping all diplomatic formality. I have children on Earth. I have grandchildren who will never understand why their grandmother died so far from home. If you want to send a message to humanity, send me back alive. Let me tell them about your concerns. We can find a peaceful solution. The Chancellor's expression did not change. The message will be much clearer this way. The galaxy must understand that the Council will take any action necessary to preserve peace and stability. Equipment began emerging from hidden panels in the chamber floor. Bennett recognized plasma incinerators, devices used for waste disposal that could reduce any matter to its component atoms in seconds. The alien representatives watched without reaction as the deadly machines positioned themselves around the energy cage. Bennett's training as a diplomat included preparation for many dangerous situations, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. She was going to die alone, billions of miles from home, murdered by beings who claimed to represent galactic justice and peace. "My death will not stop humanity," she said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "If you kill me here, you will prove everything you claim about human aggression. You will create the very war you say you want to prevent." "War was inevitable," Chancellor Crichstall replied. "We choose to begin it on our terms with a clear demonstration of Council power. Your species will submit to containment within your current systems or face complete destruction." The plasma incinerators powered up with a high whining sound that filled the chamber. Bennett closed her eyes and thought of Earth, of blue skies and green fields and the sound of children laughing. She thought of all the humans who had dreamed of reaching the stars and finding friends among other species. "Tell my crew," she called out desperately. "Tell Captain Morrison that humanity deserves better than this. Tell them we came in peace." The incinerators fired, filling the energy cage with superheated plasma that reached temperatures of 10,000 degrees. Lavra Bennett's last scream echoed through the council chambers before cutting to silence. Her body was consumed completely, leaving only empty space within the energy barriers. Chancellor Crichstall addressed the chamber as the barriers powered down. "Let this message be broadcast to all Council territories. The species designation humanity is hereby classified as hostile. Any contact with human vessels or representatives is forbidden. Any human presence detected beyond their current territorial boundaries will be met with immediate destruction." The session ended with formal votes of agreement from all 12 species. The murder of Ambassador Lavra Bennett was entered into Council records as preventive action against existential threat. Her death was broadcast across the galaxy as both warning and promise. Captain Jake Morrison stared at the communication screen in complete shock, his hands gripping the edge of the control console until his knuckles turned white. The image of Lavra Bennett being consumed by plasma fire was burned into his mind. But he forced himself to keep watching as Dr. Hayes and Commander Wright worked frantically to record every detail of what they had witnessed. "Complete recording captured," Wright reported, her voice shaking with rage and horror. "All diplomatic protocols, the Chancellor's statements, everything. The bastards even broadcast it on open channels." Hayes was already analyzing the alien communication frequencies, trying to understand the full scope of what had happened. "Jake, they're transmitting this across the entire galaxy. This wasn't just an execution, it was a message to every species out there. They want everyone to know what happens to humans who ask for peaceful contact." Morrison turned to look at his crew of 38 men and women who had volunteered for this mission knowing they might never see home again. They had expected the possibility of rejection, even diplomatic tensions, but none of them had imagined they would witness the cold-blooded murder of their ambassador. "Captain," his communications officer Lieutenant Carl Brooks called out urgently, "multiple alien vessels are moving toward our position. Long-range sensors show at least 15 ships, all heavily armed." Morrison knew what that meant. The Galaxy Council was not planning to let any human witnesses return home alive. They wanted to eliminate every trace of what had happened here, leaving Earth and the colonies to wonder forever what had become of their diplomatic mission. "How long until they reach us?" Morrison asked. "At current speed, 47 minutes, Brooks replied. "They're not trying to hide their approach. I think they want us to know we're trapped." Morrison made the hardest decision of his life. The UHS Endeavour could not outrun the alien fleet, and even if they could, the journey home would take months. By the time they arrived, the Council might have already moved against human colonies. using the delay to paint humanity as the aggressors who had attacked their peaceful station. "Aria," Morrison called to the ship's artificial intelligence system. "I need you to prepare a quantum data burst transmission to Earth, maximum compression, highest priority routing." "Captain Morrison," the AI responded in its calm female voice. "A transmission of that magnitude will require all available power. The ship's defensive systems will be completely offline during the broadcast window." "I understand," Morrison said. "How long to prepare the transmission package? All diplomatic records, communication logs, and sensor data can be compressed and encoded in 12 minutes, Aria replied. "However, the transmission itself will take approximately 6 minutes too. Complete due to the quantum encryption requirements?" Wright looked up from her station where she had been preparing detailed reports of everything they had witnessed. "Captain, that means we'll be defenseless for 18 minutes total. Those alien ships will be in weapons range in 47 minutes, Morrison nodded grimly. "That gives us 29 minutes after transmission to prepare for what comes next. Hayes, I need you to write a complete analysis of what we witnessed. Include everything about the Council's spying operation, their biological fears about human adaptability, everything they said about monitoring us for decades." Hayes was already typing rapidly on his workstation. "I'm including xenopsychological profiles of each species we observed. The way they reacted to Laura's murder tells us a lot about their moral framework. They're not evil, Jake, but they're genuinely terrified of what humanity might become." "Good," Morrison said. "Right, I want your security assessment included in the package. Everything about their station defenses, ship designs, anything that might help if this leads to conflict." Wright's fingers flew over her keyboard as she compiled intelligence data. "Already on it. I'm also including a personal message for my sister in the Colonial Defense Force. She needs to know what we learned about their surveillance networks." Morrison moved between his crew members, ensuring everyone understood what was happening. They were going to sacrifice themselves to get the truth home to humanity. There was no debate, no hesitation. Every person on the ship understood that Earth needed to know what had really happened here. "Captain," Lieutenant Brooks called out, "I'm detecting high-energy charging signatures from the approaching fleet. They're powering weapon systems. Time to intercept, 39 minutes and counting." Morrison sat in his command chair and activated the ship-wide communication system. "All crew, this is the captain. You all saw what happened to Ambassador Bennett. The Galaxy Council murdered her in cold blood and they're planning to kill us. To cover up their crime. We're going to make sure that doesn't happen." He paused, looking around the bridge at the faces of his crew. "We're going to send everything we recorded home to Earth. The transmission will leave us defenseless. But it's the only way to warn our people about what they're really facing. When those alien ships arrive, we'll fight them as long as we can. But our primary mission now is to make sure the truth gets home." Chief Engineer Patricia Kane spoke up from her station. "Captain, I can rig the reactor to overload when they board us. Make sure they don't get any useful intelligence from our wreckage." "Do it," Morrison agreed. "But set it for manual trigger only. I want to be sure our transmission gets through." "First," Aria's voice filled the bridge. "Data compression complete. Old diplomatic records, sensor logs, and crew reports have been packaged with quantum encryption. Ready for transmission on your command." Morrison looked at the tactical display showing the approaching alien fleet. The ships were larger and more advanced than anything in the human navy, but that didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the data package that would soon be racing across space toward Earth at faster-than-light speeds. "Hayes, your analysis complete. Finished," the scientist replied. "I've included everything we know about Council species, their fear patterns, and my assessment of their true motivations. They're not conquering the galaxy. They're trying to preserve it as a static system where nothing ever changes. Humanity represents chaos to them, unpredictable evolution and growth." "Right, your security package ready, complete with technical specifications and tactical recommendations." Wright confirmed. "I've also included details about their execution method. If this leads to war, our people need to know exactly how." "They murdered Lava," Morrison stood up and walked to the center of the bridge. Through the main view screen he could see the distant stars that included Earth's sun, invisible at this range but still home to everything he cared about. "Brooks, open a channel to Earth Command on all emergency frequencies," Morrison ordered. "I want this message to reach every human settlement in space. Channel open, Captain." Morrison activated his personal recorder. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UHS Endeavor to Earth Command and all human colonies. Ambassador Lavra Bennett is dead, murdered by the Galaxy Council in violation of all diplomatic law. The attached data contains complete records of her execution and the Council's declaration that humanity is considered an existential threat to galactic peace." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "The Council has been spying on us for 70 years through hidden surveillance networks. They fear our adaptability and expansion and have decided to eliminate us before we become too powerful. This was never about diplomatic membership. It was always about whether they would allow us to exist." Morrison could see the alien fleet growing larger on the sensors. 28 minutes until intercept. "We are transmitting all diplomatic records, technical intelligence, and personal messages. The Council fleet is moving to destroy us and prevent this information from reaching home. Tell our families we did our duty. Tell them Lavra Bennett died bravely, asking for peace until the end." He looked directly into the recorder. "To whoever receives this message, the Galaxy Council has chosen war. They burned our ambassador alive and called it justice. Don't let our deaths be meaningless. Make them remember why they should have feared us." Morrison nodded to Brooks. "Aria, begin transmission. All power to communications." The ship's lights dimmed as massive amounts of energy flowed into the communication array. On the main screen, a progress indicator showed the data stream racing toward human space at quantum speeds. The message would reach Earth in 6 days, carrying the truth about Lavra Bennett's murder and humanity's first contact with galactic civilization. As the transmission continued, the alien fleet drew closer, their weapons charging for the final attack on the last human witnesses to their crime. The quantum data burst from the UHS Endeavor reached Earth's orbital monitoring station 6 days after Captain Morrison's ship was destroyed. The automated systems immediately recognized the emergency priority codes and routed the transmission to Earth Command headquarters in Geneva. Within minutes, Admiral Scott Barnes was watching the horrific recording of Ambassador Lavra Bennett's execution. President Maria Vasquez received the emergency briefing while in her office at the Terran Federation building. She watched the entire transmission twice, her face growing paler with each viewing. The holographic footage showed every detail of the council chambers, the energy barriers, and the plasma incinerators that had consumed Bennett alive while alien. Representatives watched without emotion. "How many people have seen this?" Vasquez asked her security chief. "So far, only the essential command staff," replied Director Kate Sullivan. "But the crew of the Endeavor sent copies to multiple destinations. The Colonial Defense Forces, the Deep Space Research Institute, and all major colony governors have received the transmission." Vasquez made her decision immediately. "Release everything to the public. Full broadcast on all networks, complete with technical analysis and the crew's final messages. I want every human being in the galaxy to know exactly what happened to our people." Within hours, the footage was playing on screens across Earth and every human colony. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Massive crowds gathered in city centers, demanding action against the Galaxy Council. Colonial governors called for immediate military mobilization. The human stock markets crashed as investors realized that peaceful galactic trade was no longer possible. Admiral Barnes convened an emergency meeting of the Defense Council in the underground war room beneath Geneva. The holographic display showed star charts marking every known human settlement, trade route, and military installation. For the first time in decades, Earth's defenses were placed on maximum alert. Based on Captain Morrison's intelligence data, we're facing 12 alien species with technology superior to ours in most areas, Barnes reported to the assembled military leaders. However, Dr. Hayes' analysis suggests they're overconfident and unprepared for innovative tactics. General Frank Coleman, commanding officer of the Colonial Marine Corps, studied the tactical assessments Wright had compiled before her death. Their station defenses rely heavily on energy barriers and automated systems. They don't seem to expect boarding actions or close-quarters combat. That's a weakness we can exploit. Dr. Elena Martinez stood before a classified section of the war room that few people had ever seen. As director of the Prometheus Research Initiative, she controlled humanity's most dangerous experimental weapons projects. The president had given her unlimited authorization to deploy anything that might give humans an advantage against superior alien technology. Project Ragnarok is ready for activation, Martinez announced. We've been developing quantum disruptor, weapons that can destabilize the nuclear forces holding atoms together. The effect spreads in a chain reaction that can consume entire starships or even destabilize stellar cores. Barnes looked uncomfortable with the implications. Doctor, are you talking about weapons that can destroy entire solar systems, if necessary? Martinez replied coldly. The Council murdered our ambassador and declared war on our entire species. They chose to make this a fight for survival. That means we use every weapon at our disposal. Intelligence Director Sullivan activated another holographic display showing the Galaxy Council's territory. Our deep space reconnaissance networks have been mapping their installations for years without realizing what we were looking at. We have detailed information about their military bases, shipyards, and communication relays. The president joined the meeting via secure holographic link from her emergency bunker. The council made a critical error when they let Captain Morrison broadcast their crime to the galaxy. Every other species now knows they're willing to murder diplomats and lie about it. We can use that. Admiral Barnes began outlining the military response. Phase 1 involves immediate recall of all human ships to defensive positions around our colonies. Phase 2 mobilizes our entire industrial capacity for military production. Phase 3 launches preemptive strikes against Council installations before they can organize a coordinated attack against us. General Coleman added his assessment. The Council's message to the galaxy claimed we're an aggressive species that threatens galactic peace. Let's prove them right. If they want to see human aggression, we'll show them why they should have been afraid of us from the beginning. Dr. Martinez activated Project Ragnarok's production facilities across the outer colonies. Automated shipyards that had been building. Exploration vessels and cargo haulers switched to producing weapons of unprecedented destructive power. The new Apocalypse-class battleships were designed around quantum disruptor cannons capable of tearing apart enemy vessels at the molecular level. The human response included more than just military preparations. Diplomatic teams reached out to other species in the galaxy, sharing the complete recording of Bennett's murder and exposing the Council's surveillance networks. Many smaller civilizations had never known about the hidden observation posts that monitored their activities. On Mars, the colonial shipyards worked around the clock to produce the most advanced fleet humanity had ever built. The new vessels incorporated stealth technology that could hide ships from alien sensors, quantum engines that allowed faster-than-light jumps without the traditional energy signatures, and experimental weapons that operated on principles the Council had never encountered. President Vasquez addressed the galaxy on all known communication frequencies. The Galaxy Council has declared humanity an existential threat to galactic peace. They murdered our ambassador in violation of every principle of diplomatic immunity. They have spied on our worlds for decades while pretending to ignore our existence. If they consider us a threat, then we accept that designation. The message continued with footage of human military preparations, massive fleets assembling around Earth and the colonies, new weapons being tested in the outer asteroid belts, and millions of humans volunteering for military service. The president's final words became legendary across human space. You wanted to see our true nature. You burned our representative alive and called it justice. Now you will learn why you should have chosen peace. Intelligence reports began flowing in from across the galaxy. The Council's surveillance networks were being systematically destroyed by species that had discovered hidden monitoring stations in their territory. Several alien civilizations demanded explanations from the Council about the spying operations and Bennett's murder. Admiral Barnes established the Human War Council, bringing together military leaders from every colony on Earth. The strategic planning involved coordination across dozens of star systems, timing attacks to arrive simultaneously at Council targets throughout their territory. The new human warships incorporated lessons learned from studying alien technology, but improved with human innovations. The stealth destroyers could appear and disappear from sensors like ghosts. The carrier vessels deployed swarms of automated fighters that could think and adapt faster than any alien pilot. The planet-killer dreadnoughts carried weapons capable of rendering entire worlds uninhabitable. Dr. Martinez's research teams worked with captured alien technology from previous encounters to develop countermeasures for Council weapons. Human plasma shields could now deflect the same energy that had killed Bennett. Quantum armor made ships nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons. Temporal distortion fields could slow down incoming projectiles or speed up human vessels beyond normal physical limits. The mobilization continued for 18 months, transforming human civilization from peaceful explorers into the galaxy's most dangerous military force. Every person understood that this was a war for survival. The Council had made it clear that humanity would be contained or destroyed. Colonial Governor Patricia Stone of the Centauri system sent a message that summarized humanity's new attitude. They called us aggressive and expansionist. They said we would consume and destroy everything in our path. They were wrong about our intentions, but they may have been right about our capabilities. If they want a war for the survival of galactic civilization, we'll give them exactly that. The human industrial machine produced weapons and ships at a rate that astonished even their own engineers. Automated factories built quantum torpedoes that could phase through energy shields. Shipyards constructed vessels that could fight in dimensions beyond normal space-time. Research laboratories developed biological weapons that could target specific alien genetic markers. When the human Annihilation fleet finally assembled at the edge of Council space, it represented the largest military force in recorded galactic history. Over 3,000 ships ranging from small stealth fighters to massive dreadnoughts capable of destroying planets. Every vessel was crewed by humans who remembered exactly how Ambassador LeVar Bennett had died, and who were ready to make the Galaxy Council pay for their crime. Admiral Barnes stood on the bridge of the flagship UHS Retribution, looking out at the assembled fleet. The ship's AI core contained a complete backup of Aria's personality. The human Annihilation fleet emerged from quantum space at the edge of Vega system like a swarm of metal predators. 3,000 ships materialized in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with experimental armor that seemed to bend light around them. Admiral Scott Barnes stood on the bridge of the UHS Retribution, watching his tactical displays as the largest military operation in human history began. Vega Station hung in space ahead of them, a massive Galaxy Council installation that served as the primary military command center for this sector. The station was enormous, easily 50 times larger than any human structure, with defensive platforms and patrol fleets arranged in protective formations around it. Council intelligence had never detected the approaching human fleet, thanks to stealth technology that operated beyond their understanding. "All ships report ready, Admiral," announced Captain Helen Carter, Barnes' tactical coordinator. "Stealth fields are holding steady. Enemy sensors show no indication they've detected our presence." Barnes activated the fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Barnes. Today we begin the mission that will avenge Ambassador LeVar Bennett and everyone who died with her. Remember what the Council did to our people. Remember that they chose this war when they burned our representative alive." The human fleet included revolutionary ship designs that the Galaxy Council had never encountered. The Extinction class Planet killers carried quantum disruptor weapons capable of tearing apart the fundamental forces that held matter together. The Phantom-class stealth ships could phase partially out of normal spacetime, allowing them to appear inside enemy formations without warning. The Reaper-class carriers deployed swarms of automated fighters that could think and adapt faster than any living pilot. "Admiral," reported Commander Lisa Parker from the sensor station. "Council fleet strength at Vega Station includes 47 major warships, multiple defense platforms, and approximately 200 smaller patrol craft. Their technology appears consistent with intelligence estimates." Barnes smiled grimly. The Galaxy Council still thought they were dealing with the same primitive humans who had sent a single diplomat to beg for membership. They had no idea that 18 months of total war preparation had transformed humanity into something entirely different. "Begin Phase 1, Barnes ordered. "Phantom Squadron, initiate infiltration protocols." 50 stealth ships shimmered and vanished from normal space, using experimental technology that allowed them to exist partially in alternate dimensions. The Council's sensors could not detect them as they moved through the enemy formation like ghosts, positioning themselves for maximum destruction. The first indication of attack came when the Council's communication arrays simply disappeared. The Phantom ships materialized inside the station's defensive perimeter and destroyed every transmitter with quantum torpedoes that phased through energy shields. Vega Station was suddenly cut off from the rest of the Council's military network. "Phase 2, execute," Barnes commanded. The main human fleet dropped their stealth fields and opened fire with weapons the Council had never seen before. Quantum disruptor beams tore through alien hulls like they were made of paper. Temporal distortion missiles slowed down enemy ships while accelerating human projectiles to impossible speeds. Molecular transformation charges converted entire sections of enemy vessels into expanding clouds of superheated plasma. The Council forces responded with their traditional energy weapons and defensive barriers, but nothing in their experience had prepared them for human innovation. The alien plasma cannons that had incinerated Lavra Bennett now seemed pathetically weak compared to weapons that could unravel the atomic structure of entire battleships. "Commander." Parker monitored the battle progress from her station. "Enemy fleet is attempting to coordinate defensive patterns, but their communication networks are completely destroyed. Individual ships are fighting independently with no tactical coordination." The battle lasted less than 4 hours. When it ended, Vega Station was the expanding field of debris and superheated gas. Every Council warship had been destroyed, most of them consumed completely by quantum reactions that left nothing but empty space. The human fleet had suffered minimal damage, with only 12 ships reporting minor injuries to their crews. "Admiral." Barnes opened a communication channel to broadcast across the galaxy on all known frequencies. The message would reach every inhabited system within days, carrying footage of the battle and humanity's declaration of war. "To all species and civilizations receiving this transmission," Barnes began, his voice calm and measured. "The human vessel you are seeing is the UHS Retribution, flagship of the human Annihilation fleet. We have just destroyed the Galaxy Council's primary military installation at Vega Station in retaliation for the murder of Ambassador Lavra Bennett." The broadcast included complete battle footage showing the devastating effectiveness of human weapons against Council technology. Alien military analysts across the galaxy would study the recordings and realize that everything had changed. The Galaxy Council claimed that humanity represented an existential threat to galactic peace, Barnes continued. "They executed our diplomatic representative and declared war on our entire species. We accept this designation. If the Council considers us a threat, then we will prove them absolutely correct." The fleet moved on to their next target, a Council shipyard facility in the Arcturus system. The pattern repeated with mechanical precision: stealth infiltration, communication disruption, overwhelming firepower, and complete destruction. Human forces left no survivors and took no prisoners. This was not a war for territory or resources, but for the complete elimination of the civilization that had murdered their Ambassador. Dr. Elena Martinez monitored the fleet's performance from the command vessel UHS Prometheus. Her experimental weapons were exceeding all performance projections. The quantum disruptors could destabilize matter on a scale that amazed even their creators. The temporal manipulation devices allowed human ships to fight at speeds that seemed to violate the laws of physics. Admiral, Martinez reported via secure communication. Weapon systems are performing beyond optimal parameters. We have sufficient firepower to engage Council forces across their entire territory simultaneously. I recommend expanding operations to include all major installations. Barnes agreed immediately. The human fleet split into multiple task forces, each capable of destroying entire Council fleets independently. They struck shipyards, communication relays, military bases, and administrative centers across dozens of star systems. Every attack was preceded by the same message, the recording of Lavra, Bennett's execution, and humanity's promise of complete retaliation. The Council's response was initially confident, then desperate, and finally terrified. Their emergency communications spoke of impossible human technologies and tactics that defied all military logic. Council fleets that had maintained order across the galaxy for thousands of years were being annihilated by enemies. They barely understood. Chancellor Krickstall, the same Zephyrian who had pronounced Bennett's death sentence, made increasingly frantic appeals for peace. These messages were broadcast directly to human forces along with recordings of the execution, ensuring every human soldier remembered exactly what they were fighting to avenge. The Council recognizes that errors may have been made in our assessment of human intentions, Krickstall announced in one desperate transmission. We are prepared to discuss terms for ending this conflict and establishing peaceful relations between our species. Admiral Barnes responded by broadcasting the Chancellor's message alongside footage of Bennett's murder. The time for discussion ended when you burned our ambassador alive, he replied. You wanted to demonstrate Council power by murdering a diplomatic representative. Now you will learn what human power looks like when we stop pretending to be civilized. The systematic destruction continued for 6 months. Human forces targeted not just military installations but also the infrastructure that supported Council civilization. Trade routes were eliminated by quantum mines that could destroy entire fleets. Communication networks were replaced with human monitoring stations that broadcast Bennett's execution on continuous loop. Resource extraction facilities were converted to expanding fields of quantum fire that consumed everything within light years. The surviving Council species began to scatter, abandoning their unified government and fleeing to the far reaches of the galaxy. Some attempted to negotiate separate peace agreements with humanity, offering technology and resources in exchange for survival. All such offers were rejected with the same response: the complete recording of Lavra Bennett's murder and humanity's promise that no Council species would escape justice. The final battle took place in the Council's home system, where their original capital world orbited an ancient star surrounded by the accumulated treasures of 1,000 civilizations. The planet's surface was covered with beautiful cities, art galleries, and libraries containing the cultural heritage of every species that had ever joined the Council. Admiral Barnes stood in what had once been the Galaxy Council chambers, now a memorial to Ambassador Bennett and everyone who had died with her. The same platform where she had been executed was now marked with a holographic display showing